Okay, so good evening, everyone. I am Unnati, and I am an Education USA advisor based out of Kolkata. And welcome to our session regarding activities lists and resume for the undergraduate applicant. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Ms. Brett Luther, who will be joining us today from the University of Rochester. Ms. Brett Luther is the Assistant Director of International Admissions at the University of Rochester in upstate New York. She has been working in international education for 8 years and has benefited from working at both the public and private universities with students from over 120 countries. She holds a bachelor's degree in German as well as a master's in communication studies and intercultural communication. Brett's favorite part of her work is meeting students where they are. And with that, I would like to extend my welcome to you, Brett. And I look forward to your part of the presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for being here today, for signing up, and spending your evening with us.
Yeah. And just a few housekeeping rules. We will be beginning shortly. So please use the chat box to introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. And if you're a student, parent, or counselor, this will give us some idea of how to direct our presentation. Do use your headphone for an enhanced audio quality. And do mute your microphones as well as your camera while you are in this webinar. You can type in the questions or comments in either the chat box in Zoom if you're on this platform or any other platform you are in. We will be monitoring questions from all of our live platforms and answering them in the end. So do keep putting them in as you attend the webinar, and we will answer them very soon. Do check out the resources that we will be posting in the comment box at the end of the session. This will be for our Zoom attendees. If you are on another live stream, you can email me later and I can send over those handouts to you. So like I said, this is a very important session about undergraduate applications, the activities list and the resume. This is a part of the application that is often forgotten, but it is a very, very important part of the holistic admissions process. So before we dive into that, I would like you to tell you a little bit about Education USA. Many of you may have attended the rest of the webinar series or interacted with us virtually or in person before. We are a US State Department supported organization. So we are the official source of higher education in the US. So we are the official source of information, which is supposed to be current, accurate, and comprehensive. We have over we are present in over 170 countries, and we have many, many centers around the world. So you should come to us, even if you are consulting other sources. We are here to provide the correct information. So just a little bit before we begin, I would like to basically tell you a little bit about the US higher education. So why would you even choose a US higher education? I am actually a US University alum myself, so just like many other of our advisors. And one thing about US universities is over there you learn how to learn. So what really makes a US education stand out is that the US is the educational magnet of the world. The highest number of international students from India actually choose US as their destination, and it has some of the finest universities and facilities in the entire globe. It is a really valuable education, although it is a financial and an emotional investment. It is something that is recognized globally. You are rewarded not only by employers, but graduate schools for choosing this education. And everyone knows that a US graduate brings certain qualities to wherever they end up after this journey. So you really stand out from the crowd, and this is something that's very respected all over the world. It is a reputed education. So US universities have a lot of resources in every field that you can think of. They also have a lot of companies that are at the top of the field that you may want to work for later, or you may want to intern for. So that is something that is also very important, and you get access to that by choosing this country to study in. It's a very flexible education. This is something that is a little unique to the US education, that it offers students flexibility to choose from a wide range of programs, core courses, and electives. In the undergraduate program, for the first 1.5 years, you don't need to declare a major. You can actually explore, and you're forced to explore different courses that are out there to choose which path you want to pursue later. So this flexibility is very important to a US education. So if you have attended a 5 steps webinar with Education USA, or if you haven't yet, do attend one of these. We recommend a very simple 5 steps to apply to the US. The first step is researching your options. The second step is financing your studies. And the third step is completing your application. We have already had a webinar on researching your options, as well as a webinar on the essays, which is a part of completing your application. We will have webinars in the next few weeks regarding financing your studies. And once you do get that admit from your dream university, we will also help you, guide you about applying for the student visa, because a lot of Education USA centers are located in or near the consulate. We are able to provide you with that guidance on how to navigate the student visa interview. We also prepare you for departure. So this is a unique factor to Education USA, that we don't leave the student's hand right after they get an admit. We want you to be successful in the university, and we give you a lot of tips and preparation before you actually get admitted to the university. We also help you after you get admitted with our wide range of alumni that we have interacted with previously or are a part of that alumni network. So just to streamline your application process, I will just pause for a few seconds on this screen. This is your timeline that you should be following while applying to US universities. And right now, since it is September today, you should have begun preparation on your common application or other forms, and as well as preparing to complete your application. Do keep in mind that the deadlines are for early action as well as early decision is in November, and for your regular decision is in December to January, which varies from university to university. So do look at their website to get more information. And lastly, this is the undergraduate application packet. Like we know, undergraduate universities need a variety of information to judge a student profile correctly. They do not only judge you based on your academics, although that is an important part of the application packet. You do need to submit an application fee or an application form for each application. You have academic transcripts from your class 9 to your class 12, including the board exam results of your class 10 and your class 12. If you haven't taken class 12 yet, you will need to give a predicted score. Your standardized tests, so you do have to take either the SAT or the ACT, SAT subject test if required. And you can always take other tests such as AP to transfer college credits to your when you begin university. But do keep in mind, there are certain universities which have made accommodations for students to be test optional due to the current situation. So do check those universities as well, where you may or may not need to submit this standardized test scores. You need to take an English proficiency test. So either TOEFL, IELTS, or PTE is required for an international application. Then letters of recommendation, 1 from your counselor and 2 from your subject teachers. Your application essay, so you will need 1 main application essay as well as some supplement essays for each college. A supplementary essay like we've already discussed, maybe a portfolio or a video essay if you're applying to those certain specialized programs such as design or an athletic scholarship, a CSS profile, ISFAA, or FAFSA if you're a US citizen. These are financial aid forms. The resume, which we will be discussing today, which is optional, but very important, is the activities list, which is mostly required for all applications. The interview, again, this is an optional interview. Some universities provide it, some do not. And they will need a proof of finances either at the application stage or after you get an admit. So we are in the undergraduate application camp. We began on August 13th, and what a journey it has been. We have talked about finding the best fit university. We have talked about college essays, and we have done a wonderful mentoring session hearing from success stories of previous applicants. And today we are going to discuss the activities list and resume. And we have a few more application camp sessions left, which you should sign up for in the coming weeks. With that, I would like to hand it over to Brett, who will take you through the activities list. Brett.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for sharing this evening with us. I'm super excited to have you here. I regret very much that I cannot be in India right now. And I certainly hope with everything happening with the pandemic that you are well and your loved ones are well. Just my thoughts are with you. And just to talk a little bit today about the activities list, which is not a hot topic in a lot of presentations you'll see right now. Most are focused, on other important topics such as the essay, interviewing, college fit. All of these things are so important. And so I really hope that you were taking advantage of the Education USA series here with each of these presentations, because they are very important in their own ways. So thank you again for being here. We're just going to get started right off into it. So the activities list. I say that with excitement because I absolutely love seeing what students are up to, what you're involved in. And so that's something that's very exciting to see as a reader. I want to just start off with this photo. This is actually from our university Bhangra group on campus. So we do have over 300 different clubs and organizations at the University of Rochester. And this is one of my absolute favorites. So I go to their performances. They are fantastic. They actually compete throughout the nation and do really well. So just one of the cool opportunities on campus that reminds me of, Indian culture and really at these times where I can't travel to see you personally, it really makes me miss India all the more, because typically I travel to you once or twice a year. So definitely missing that connection. So let's just get started. So first, before we dive too deep into the activities, I want to first talk just a little bit about what the holistic admission considerations are. So of course, we are going to take a look at what we call the student profile. The student profile is everything from your academics to who you are. Are you a first generation student for your family, college student? What are the activities, of course? What do your essays look like? All of these things sort of combine to show us who you are. And we're reviewing your profiles within the context of where you're located and also within your school. So I think that's important to note because, especially when I'm reading for India, and I read over 700 applications between November and January each year. And believe me, I'm reading them. It is really important to note that we are looking at you in the context of your school and your academics, because that's really important. We're not going to compare, private school students and public school students and, because that's not fair, right? We're looking at solely, what opportunities you have available to you. Are you taking those opportunities? So I really like to highlight that. We're also looking for, curiosity. What are you curious about? What you sort of light your fire for education and knowledge? And how are you engaging in your communities? These are also very important. Of course, the unique facets of each and every student is what I really love to sort of find out. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit of a detective, right? I'm looking through an application and I'm really kind of searching for those facets that are, unique to you. You are unique. And so however you can show that to us, that's great. Of course, we're looking for honesty. respectful examination of ideas. So I will go into that a little bit more later for the tips, but be honest, be respectful, and that will really help as well. And of course, at the University of Rochester, this is very specific to us. We're really looking for students that want to make the world better. And that sounds really cheesy maybe, but it's true. Our staff, faculty, and students are constantly pushing the boundaries of their disciplines, but also right within our communities too. So we have a lot of social activism, a lot of philanthropies and community service projects. We're really devoted to this idea of ever better. Next slide. Thank you. So what is the student profile? I mentioned it before, it's the meat of the application. So this is everything from your grades and coursework to your test scores, if you decide to submit them. So fun fact, the University of Rochester actually has been test flexible since 2003, but we went fully test optional last year. So we were actually a little bit ahead of the curve. I'm not saying we're mind readers, but it worked out really nicely because, at the end of the day, if you don't test well, that doesn't mean you're not smart. And I'm just going to say that again, because I think that's really important. If you do not do well on standardized exams, does not mean that you are not smart. So we like to give you the opportunity to if you're proud of your scores and you want to send them in, absolutely. But if you don't, if you choose to be test optional, we're not going to penalize you. Just to move on here, some, your personal development shows on your student profile. All of these topics just show us what's important to you and, how, well you could fit in with, our students at the University of Rochester. But also, how do we fit you? It's a two-way street there. So show your leadership, how you align with each of your universities that you may be considering. Their value system is important. So look at the university's values. Make sure that they're values that you find important and that you find that you embody, and that will certainly serve you well. So I love this photo too. This is a few of the members of our ADITI Association. It's the Association for the Development of Interest in the Indian Subcontinent. And I absolutely adore this group as well. They just do a lot of really fun cultural events and really just disseminate all this great knowledge about India and sharing food and culture and customs. And it's just a lot of fun. So for some things to include on your activities list, of course, athletics is great. Special interest organizations, performance groups, community involvement, philanthropy and work experiences, community service, all of these things kind of piece together and show us who you are and what is important to you. So I think that's really important consideration. So don't focus too heavily on, just your athletics. If you've been in a lot of different organizations and activities, that's great. Make sure that you're really representing those which you find the most important to you and the most valued, and dive in. So focusing on impact is a really big part of, your activities list. So when I mentioned earlier, looking at personal values, of course, most universities and colleges are going to look for that leadership, equity, integrity in your application and how you carry yourself, and perhaps, not just, oh, I was in this group, but what did you do within the group? What was your impact with the group? Those are really important considerations to really think about when you're writing out your activities list. So make sure that, you brag about yourself, because at the end of the day, this is the place to do it. So don't be shy, don't be meek. Absolutely tell us what you've done and how you're a rock star, and how you've changed people's lives around you. And that's really, really important. At the U of R, we're particularly also looking for your commitment to Meliora, which is our motto, and it means ever better out of Latin, roughly translated, that is. And so with this idea of Meliora, how have you made a difference? And I've mentioned this a couple times now, and it's just so important. How are you changing things around you in a positive way? How are you inciting changes? One of the things I say about our students at the U of R, when I'm asked, oh, what's the average student like at the U of R? There's really not an average student. We have just such a diversity of thought and character, and it's really wonderful. But something that I do think is very common in the U of R student is this idea of being like a trailblazer, somebody who goes out and sees that there's a need for something, and if there's nothing around to support that need, they're starting it. Right. So whether it's an idea you have in your discipline for a new technology to help, folks with disabilities, or, right within the community, if there's an issue with the environment that needs to be addressed, students at the University of Rochester are committed to fixing these issues by providing support. So I think that that's really important to note. Now, depth versus breadth. I don't know that students oftentimes really think about these. And this is really critical to focusing on. Oh.
I would just like to request everyone to mute themselves and put yourself off camera just for
Thank you. So depth and breadth. So those are two different ways that you can see your activities list. So less can be more. So I'll have students that apply and do a great job because, they've maybe joined 10 different activities within high school, and that's wonderful. But also, we're looking for depth. So I'm going to want to look at, if you joined biology club and you love it, have you been in that, at least 2-3 years? Were you just in it for 1 year and then you didn't come back for senior year? Things like that, that show us just how deep your interest into that organization goes. So, and that can be with anything. I mean, that not just academic clubs and organizations, but that can be, athletics as well, and committee or community projects and things like that. So really looking at the depth of your knowledge and your interest in a subject, as well as, how far across do your interests span? So really kind of think about what is most important to you on your activities list, in terms of, what are your most important accomplishments? What are your favorite activities and clubs? How do you dive, deep into your interests? These are all really important facets to consider. Also, enhancing any pre-COVID activities. I know with this crazy pandemic time, it has certainly thrown a wrench in things, right? So bringing to light what you've been doing up to this point, before this disruption, is going to be very important. So what are these impactful things? How have you had an impact prior to COVID? And also for universities like the U of R, we actually will have a supplement this year focused on COVID-19 and what you did, what you've sort of done through this difficult time. And so that's another area that you can certainly say, I've really was impacted by XYZ, but I've also found this new hobby that I love, or this new activity, or I've been giving back to the community with education about the virus, things like that, but also enhancing what you've done before. So it's going to be a very interesting year. And to read applications, I am already thinking about it. Like, I'm in November and I'm going to start reading all these applications, and it's just going to be a very, very interesting time. So definitely enhance those pre-COVID activities. Don't be shy about talking about your accomplishments and what you're proud of. These are still important, even if you can't commit to them in senior year because of disruptions. All the more reasons to really think hard about how you can represent those activities in the best light. So to move on a bit, another way to format your activities list is to really take a look at the content, right, of your list. So I'm going to have an example in a bit, but essentially, you want to have action words. Use verbs that, are like I have here for tips, aim for variety. Don't overuse the same verbs like I chaired the committee for XYZ. And then, you use that same, like I chair, or I shouldn't say even chaired. I should say committed to XYZ, committed to ABC. You want to kind of spice it up, and I'll show you a little bit how to do that in a moment. But aim for variety and get those action words in there. Show us what you've done. These should be exciting, and we'd like to see your excitement about the things that you've done. Also, time spent. I'm going to give you a little best practice here about how much time, because I know that the Common Application and Coalition, they ask, how much time do you spend during the year, for example, in this organization, this activity. And it becomes a little difficult to discern when a student's like, oh, I commit to 42 weeks per year versus, standard activity level, like throughout the school year. Is it something that you do in the summer as well? Think about the timing of where you're spending that time within the group. Also, with I believe with the Common Application, you can also not include this. So if it's something that maybe you just did for a day, it was a day of community service, but you feel like it was very impactful for you, you don't need to put 5 hours for the year or something like that. You can feel free to leave that off, because that is not going to really be helpful. It's really, the time spent is really more for those involvements that you have that are very, very involved, that you do on a regular basis, and you're very much committed to. That's when I would put more info on the time spent. Otherwise, it's not going to hurt you to leave that off. We know as counselors, the standard times for students who are, in biology club, not to use that example again, I should use something else, in band or something, per school year. I mean, that's pretty standard, right? To figure out, you usually have like a weekly meeting. But if you go above and beyond, and you spend a lot more, significantly more time in that group, absolutely, this is a place to include that for us. The what, why, and how of things. So what are you involved in? Why are you involved in it? And maybe how did you get involved with it? So thinking about, what's your purpose of being in this organization? Is it because you have a friend who is and they highly recommended it? Or is it because perhaps, one of your parents was a musician and you just love music and you want to be involved with that? Tell us, a little bit more like of the why this organization, especially when it comes to that depth that we talked about. So, having dive deep into it. Say you're in an organization or an activity for 4 years, like 4 years of the end of school, and you want to write about like why that was so important for you. So feel free to include that. And you can also, sprinkle this methodology sort of in throughout your student profile as well, to really show us what's the most important for you. What is your personal contribution? I know I said, brag about yourself, and please do. What did you personally contribute to each of these activities, organizations? If you honestly can't think of anything, or if there's a group, maybe you are more an active, participant, less on the leadership side of things, or perhaps you don't feel like there were a lot of personal contributions there, that's fine. Just you can leave that off, just say, what the club is about and why you're a part of it. But, if you do have really outstanding leadership, or you've really helped the group grow in a variety of ways, tell us about it. Brag about yourself, because that's exciting. And I can tell you as a counselor that is very memorable for me. So at the end of your application, when I'm finished reading it, I hope to have these standout things in my mind that tell me about you. So that's definitely something you can contribute to making a stronger profile and stronger activities list. Subject. So this is important because sometimes students will, I feel like as a reader from India, and I've read for India for quite some time, I typically know the terms of the organizations and clubs and, what those are about. However, I still see a lot that are brand new to me. And I ask myself, well, what is that group? Like, what does that mean? Perhaps it's a term in Hindi that I don't know. So be sure to put the subject of what that activity is about for us readers, just, to be safe, and so that we don't maybe have to look it up or Google it, which, then distracts us from your application, right? And another thing to include, your most impactful contributions. Keep your list concise, keep it short, to the point. Put your most impactful things. You don't need to write everything that you've ever done in the organization or what the organization's done. Just focus on, again, that impact, and that will really serve you well. And just a few tips. I talked about variety. Don't use the same verbs over and over and over and over again. Use present tense for things that you're still a part of. So, when you're writing down your activities list, if you left the art society in the 11th grade, but you still had really great contributions there and you want to include it, just put past tense for things. I committed to, not committing to, things like that. And so that shows me that, you're not still doing that. I mean, you can also put that it's not current. However, having that is something that clearly differentiates that it's something you've done in the past. So use present tense for things that you're still doing. So I am committing to serving the community for 10 hours a week doing this. Those are going to be much stronger for you. And then also trim it down. Like I mentioned before, being concise is very critical here, because especially if you are perhaps a student that has a great breadth to what you've done in your activities, maybe reconsidering, what activities you're going to include based on how much impact, how important they were, maybe time spent, all of those things, rather than feeling the need to list out everything you've done in all of your secondary. So And that's really going to be important because at the end of the day, readers have only about, anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes or so to read your application because of the sheer number that we get. And as the reader for India, I can tell you that I read all of the Indian applications and I absolutely love it. But I don't have a ton of time. And I wish that I did to review absolutely everything at my leisure. I have to kind of see these points pretty quickly, right? So trimming it down just really helps in that pursuit. Also, emphasizing your measurable impact. We already talked about impact and how you can measure that is very important as well. So, if you held an event for one of your organizations, for example, and maybe what the outcomes were of that. And perhaps from past years, you've increased the participation of that event, right? That's a measurable impact. So if you can say increased attendance from 58 students to 103 students. I mean, that's something that's measurable. And that also just adds to that impact that you've had by putting that together. So, anytime you can measure the impact that you have, include it because that is something that's very impressive to see. And again, I already mentioned this, so I won't spend any time, but okay to just list the activity that you've been in for like a day or like 2 days of the year. You can just put those as, your participant, unless you led the group. You can just list those like that. No need to put a lot of information there. And finally, don't stretch the truth. I can't really say how important this is enough. I actually had a very unfortunate situation this past reading season where I actually had a set of twins. And I won't, of course, mention names or schools, but a set of twins who largely stretched the truth on their activities list and their application in general, and put down that they were a part of things that they were not, and had never shown up for. And so, that's pretty easy actually to spot. You'd be surprised because certain things don't fit, right? You can tell when something is outside of the norm or, you're not really seeing that consistency. So it ended up that the counselor of the students actually reached out to me and we had a discussion. And she said, I noticed that, this seemed a little off to me. And so I called the leaders of these events that they supposed to have done, and they were not a part of it. They didn't show up for it. And so, of course, that's an automatic deny for those students. So, and, sometimes also too, we talk very often to our peer institutions as well. So if you get sort of that kind of a black mark from your application for doing that, for maybe falsifying anything, it's likely that other schools are going to catch on or hear of it. So definitely just something, just don't do that. Be honest, be you. So I promised at least an example of formatting. So I'd really like to take you from looking at this very sort of redundant listing of an activity to how you can really make it more polished and shine. So position, leadership, description. These are verbatim like what Common App will ask you. A student put president, organization, STEM club. In the description, I am the president for the STEM club. I think, we can all see why that's wasting space and also redundant because, you already told us you're the president and it's for the STEM club. So by using that as your description, that's just, wasting the time and the characters that you could be using to really talk about your pursuits and your leadership within the STEM club, right? So you only get 150 characters per per activity, and that includes from your position, leadership description, organization name. It includes all of this. So you have to really be careful with how you use that 150 characters, right? So if I were to see that, you can trim it down. In this case, actually, you would trim it up. You would actually add a bit to it and trim out the redundancy there. But, still putting that you're president of the STEM club, perhaps, including your high school name there. I think that's important because some clubs and organizations aren't just confined to one high school. You might be in an organization and the chair or co-chair of that organization, but it's for, Gurgaon or, Baroda or, a greater whole, like maybe the city, and all inclusive of the schools in that area. So it can be nice to see that it is a specific club for your school. So yeah, feel free to include that if you like. And then of course, school description, and managed programs. Obviously now this is going to be somebody that has already completed this task, this project, and they're not still currently doing so because they're using that past tense. So managed programs, provided leadership and nurtured interest in STEM, liaised with faculty sponsor. So these are all past tense. So I can tell right away the student was the president of this club, is not currently, which is totally fine. But this just jumps out at me much more than just one line that didn't even need to be. Okay. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Unnati. She will be continuing with the importance of the resume. And these things really kind of go hand in hand. So I'd like to welcome Unnati back.
Thank you, Brett, and thank you for that wonderful section on the activities list. So before I begin my section of this presentation about the resume, I would like to just point out a few things that you should keep in mind that Brett has already talked about. At this point, you are just assembling your application. So you have already baked the cake. You have already finished all the work. You have already done all of your activities. All you need to do is ice it. There's a certain way and certain format of presenting your activities that really make it shine out to admissions officials. We are not telling you to do something extra at this moment. All we are telling you is to capture what you have done in a very cohesive manner so that you are capturing the essence of what you have actually done to showcase it to admissions officials and stand out in their pile of applications. Also, keep in mind that they are reading each and every application very carefully. Like Brett has already mentioned, they do see consistency across the application. So they are not reading just the activities list separately and then going back to your essay. They are trying to match. If you have talked about certain activities in your essay, if you have talked about certain activities in your activities list, they're going to match that information to see if there is any additional information you have provided, or if there is information that is not matching, in which case they will investigate. Like Brett says, she is a little bit of a detective. She's trying to understand if you are actually telling the truth and if you are actually shining in the way that you're portraying on your lists. Also, they are trying to gauge whether you're a good fit in their university. So obviously, they want to get someone who is a good fit to their student community. So make sure that you are researching the universities you're applying to well, what kind of values are standing out, and try to highlight those values, try to highlight that those things, if they match with you in your essays, as well as these other sections such as the activities list and resume. So without further ado, I will tell you a little bit more about the student resume. And let me tell you that it is an optional section, right? The student resume is not really required after you have submitted the activities list for most universities. If you're using the portals such as Common Application, Coalition Application, or other application portals. Some universities do require the resume and they do not give you space to put in your activities separately. So do know that this is optional for most applications, but do check the university website before creating this. In the resume, you need to highlight any extra information that you haven't highlighted already in the application. The admissions officials, like Brett said, they are reading 700 applications in 2 months. So they're not really have a lot of time to spend on each application. So if you have anything additional to say, then you can write it in your resume if you have not been able to incorporate it in your other sections of the application. And make sure that your resume has a clear goal. So if you're trying to communicate that you're a student who is, for example, if you're applying to University of Rochester and you're someone who wants to be ever better, this is something that maybe a goal that you're trying to highlight in your resume. So try to gear your resume in that manner. So what is the student resume? And how is it different than other documents or terms that you may have heard about? So firstly, there are different types of resumes, right? Must have seen the most common one is a work resume, which is basically a summary of the work experience you have, your education and the skills. So this is something that probably people who have graduated from college may create, or people who are your parents or your mentors may be having with them. So make sure that we are not trying to submit a work resume yet. Maybe in a few years, you will need to create something like this. And also the student CV. What is a student CV? It's a list of everything that you have ever done in your entire class 9 and above. It has more variety. So it has basically everything that you have done. You don't need to really filter it. And it may or may not be goal oriented. So over here, your main idea in a CV is to just list out everything that you have been involved in, all of your accomplishments, whether or not it really needs to serve a purpose. So there is no length limit. And like my colleagues may or may not agree with me, but LinkedIn is a good platform to have something like your CV, showcased it. But your activities list and your resume are something that are more focused and goal oriented. Here you are choosing academic research, activities, awards, skills that you're highlighting to show to the admissions official that you are ready to be a fit on their campus. You are doing this not only in a qualitative manner, so you're not only writing words, but you're going to use a real estate of that one sheet of paper in which you're going to incorporate all of these activities to quantify it. So if you have made a certain impact, like Brett has already mentioned, this is an impact-oriented document. You need to mention the quantity of impact that you have created. And we will go through a few examples in the upcoming slides. So do keep in mind that we are looking at the student resume. And what is the format of a student resume? So there are certain sections in a student resume, which includes identifiers. So it's very important, since it is a document that is attached to the additional information section of your common application or any other portal you're submitting from. You need to make sure you put your name and all of the identifying information, such as your address, your phone number, your email ID, right on top of the resume, so that the admissions officials are not confusing you with someone else. You need to list your education and your awards. A lot of opportunities in India are academics oriented. So make sure that you really shine over there and list everything that you're proud of in your education and awards section. Your experiences. So you may have had certain internship experiences. You may have more probably had academic experiences, such as group projects. If you're, say, in IB, you may have worked on a certain project for your test that you're very proud of. If you're in ICSC, CBSC, you may have had certain projects you've created as a part of your board exams. So those kind of things you can even put in your resume that you did not have space to put in your activities list. You may have volunteered somewhere and you want to really talk about that. So this is the place where you can put it. The extracurricular activities that you have done outside of academics, if you have missed out something that you really want, that you want to shine over here, you can mention it in your resume. The skills section is a very unique section of the student resume that is not available in the activities list or any other part of your application, where in one glance, the admissions officer can understand what are the kind of skills that you have that you haven't mentioned in your essay or in your activities list. So this is one so even if the resume is optional, I would highly recommend that do create this, even if you choose not to submit it, because it is something that is useful for you to kind of evaluate your skills, as well as when later on you do get into university, this may be actually used for different purposes, like getting research opportunities or getting different on-campus jobs and things like that. So do create it at this moment, because it may be a useful practice for you. And I would like to reveal that my sibling is actually a junior at the University of Rochester. So everything that Brett has talked about, I do know of those little references, the Bhangra Club, the motto. She is also doing well over there. And this is her resume. It's not a perfect resume, but it does showcase the student resume format that we want, that we have talked about. Now, this format is something that when you go into the career center of a university, they will recommend that you create your resume in this way. So if you want to begin this way, I think it is the best option. So you begin with subheadings such as, say, for education. You need to list out what education experiences you've had. For you, it will just be your high school name. If you've had multiple high schools, do list that. What kind of education did, if you were in the commerce stream, you can list that. If you were in the science stream, you can list that as well. You can list so you won't have a GPA. Most probably, Indian students have a percentage that they get in marks. Do not convert it. My advice would be to a GPA if you do not have one given by your school. Just write the percentage. If it is something you're proud of, you can put it in your education section. And do write on the right hand side when you're expected to graduate from high school. For example, for you, it will probably be like 2021. So you can say expected May 2021, or whenever you are graduating. Relevant experiences. So this is one thing that most student resumes can either be arranged reverse chronologically. That means the most recent experience comes first, or it can be also arranged in a functional manner. So prioritizing what is the most important activity that you want to showcase and you have spent most time on, you want to put it first, even though you did it a little earlier in your career. You can separate this by making one section known as relevant experiences. And then in the next section, you can say other experiences. So this is just half of the resume. So you can write, first you need to put down what you were in. So the club's name or the activity's name. Then the second line needs to be the position you had. So for example, STEM club, and you were the president. So STEM club president is how you will put the designation. And then on the right, you will put the duration. From when to when were you a part of this club? So if you're a part of this club since class 9, you need to put that year till when. You can even say /present if you're currently a part of that club. We will go over the bullet points, what you need to put in the bullet points in the next section. So do keep in mind that you can distinguish between relevant experiences and other experiences by prioritizing, but still making it reverse chronological. So the things that you have done most recently right now. The next section that I want to highlight is the skills and interest section. So most people in India are trilingual. And this is something that was very surprising to a lot of my university friends. A lot of them were monolingual, or some of them were bilingual. But being trilingual is something that is very unique to a lot of students from this country. So do brag about that. Do write languages and put down the languages that you know. And then you can also actually in brackets write the proficiency level. So if you know it at a native proficiency or bilingual proficiency or the working proficiency, you can put it in brackets to kind of show the impact or the proficiency level. Put down your computer skills. Excuse me. So you can actually mention different things that you know on the computer. Obviously, some of the things are very silly over here, such as Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint. You are supposed to probably know those devices by now. You're a millennial. You're actually the Gen Z. So you don't need to really mention those things. But things like if you have worked with Java, or if you have worked with Python or different coding languages, if you have certain computer skills like that, technology skills that you want to highlight, Tableau is a data visualization tool. Then there are a lot of things that I don't even recognize on there. Okay, so the interests, you can actually put a line of your interests, the things that you like doing, because like admissions officials, like Brett is mentioning, she wants to know you as a person. So you can say she wants to have an image of you. So she wants to have an image of Vanshika. What was she doing when she was in class 12? So she has written that she likes to travel, she likes to play tennis, she likes to dance. So these are things that are showing your interest, not only your experiences. And right now she has joined a dance club in University of Rochester, and she continues to travel a lot. So these are things that are important to universities. You can mention in your skills and interests section. And diving a little more deeper into something that Brett has already mentioned, the why, what, and how. So if you want to dive a little deeper into the structure of what you're going to write while describing the activities list, you will be talking about the project. So like she says that a lot of admissions officials are very familiar with the region, and they do know some activities like Model United Nations. You don't need to re-explain to them what that means if it is a very common activity. So you can say about what kind of problem, what was the project, what kind of problem were you solving. So look at it from that lens, that you entered a club and you saw a problem. What kind of problem were you solving? For example, I recognized the dwindling attendance at cultural events. Notice how I'm still using action words in the beginning of the resume, and these will be in bullet points. So do use the action words handout. I would request Jaideep from my team to share the action words handout on the chat box in Zoom. If you don't, if you're on other platforms, do email me. I will share my email ID and I'll share this action words handout with you. What was the action that you did? So how did you solve that problem? So this student has created a social media presence of the club and designed viral ad campaigns. So he has basically not only created the social media presence, but also made sure that the content on that social media is something that is engaging students or the audience he wants to attract to the cultural club. And the result, so you really need to say the so what. You've done all these things, but so what? Like, what will me, the admissions official, do with this information? Like, how is it important? What happened over there? So you need to conclude the story. You need to say what impact you created by that activity. So this, by creating a presence for the social media club, they have increased the cultural club attendance threefold. So this shows a very big impact, that not only did they recognize a valuable problem, they solved it, and that created an impact. And over here, I would like to also mention, do quantify this impact. So if you are, like I said, threefold is a quantity that you have provided for the official to know how big was your impact. You can also put that in percentage as well. So this is the PAR statement. So what you're going to write on the bullet points under the different places in the resume, and you can actually customize this to also use in the activities list, like Brett has already mentioned. And I would like to invite Brett again back on camera to share with you some additional tips to make your profile shine. I know a lot of questions on this are coming, so this will answer a lot of your questions.
Yeah, hopefully. So thank you so much, Unnati. And the the information that you've provided on resumes is really super helpful for our students, because yes, we do see a lot of applicants who will list out all of the activities in the Common App, which is great, but then also provide a resume that looks the exact same. Essentially, it has all the same information, and so it really is important to take a look at how you're using that resume if you are including it. And so thank you so much for pointing out such important tips. So I just have a few tips, to talk briefly about to make your profile shine among, a sea of others. So, just some of the things to be mindful of and perhaps absolutely take advantage of is, when we're talking about making yourself shine. And putting your best foot forward and bragging about yourself. Provide links to any portfolios that you have or projects that you feel really have impacted you and you're very proud of. You can do that in the supplement portion. That's why it's the supplement portion, right? So that's anything that can supplement your application in the eyes of your counselor. So I have seen a lot of really great quality material come in through supplements. I had a student this past year who I think might have been from Mumbai, who was a rapper, and actually had this really cool, high quality, like music video of him rapping. And it was so much fun. And I was also very impressed because I could never have done anything of that quality for a video. I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world. So, that was a cool example. I've gotten a lot of really great artwork portfolios. I'm an artist myself, so I really especially appreciate that. Of course, I can't be biased, so I would never give you extra points, but per se, but it looks good and it's really nice to see. However, again, it's just a supplement. If you feel like you've done your job at the end of the day and, your student profile, your activities list, everything is lining up and it really is showing us who you are, that's great. You don't have to, add a supplement. That's just totally an option. But I certainly do appreciate seeing those, and I've seen a lot of really cool things. And as Unati said, provide your LinkedIn information. If you'd rather do that than, a resume or have them both, even just maybe a link, that is also very helpful because believe it or not, with your LinkedIn, we're seeing sort of how you're marketing yourself. So where a resume is fantastic, LinkedIn and resumes sort of are, if you put them on the scale, they're right there with each other. They're both beneficial in their different ways. And LinkedIn, one of the cool things about it is that, you're marketing yourself. So do you have a photo, a professional headshot of yourself? What is your background image? I know, I think in the last year or two, LinkedIn has started allowing you to put like a header photo behind you, sort of like on like Facebook. And so, what is that of, and how are you listing out your accomplishments there, especially if you have a resume or you listed your activities on your activities list. So LinkedIn can be very beneficial as well as an alternative. Do also include, a personal website if you have one. I've seen some very impressive websites and some very non-impressive websites. And you know what? That's fine. Even if your personal website is not, I can't even think of, like a top tier, looking very professional website. It's kind of the thought that counts, as long as it's not unprofessional and that, doesn't have content you should not be sharing with counselors or, sensitive information, things like that. Otherwise, if you've built a personal website, I think that's a really great opportunity and something really cool to show us. So don't be afraid to include those links in your supplements. And then lastly, along with what Unati said about, resume, reconsider including your resume if you've included all of that information already in your activities list and elsewhere on your application. Just again, for time purposes, because the reality is we will only have as counselors maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and 7 is very generous on an application. So if you could use the tips that Unati's given you to sort of tailor what your resume says, so it enhances your activities and your experiences rather than restates them, that's going to be very, very important, especially as you go through this year and you're going to be applying to, I don't know if you're interested in 2 universities or 10 universities and colleges throughout the world, you're going to need to be mindful of the fact that, you might not always represent yourself the exact same way. And what I mean by that is still be authentic. It's very important to be your authentic self. So I'm not saying you would make things up from university to university, but you might frame things with more importance depending on school values and university values. So it's important to know your audience and be mindful of the counselors that are reading your application when you are applying to that individual school. If you are, however, writing out your resumes, you don't always have to, provide those to each and every institution, as well as kind of take a look at the school and the institution, really do some research into what's going to help you there. So those are just some quick tips to really help you polish your profile and make sure that it stands out. Because like I said earlier, at the end of reading your application, I really want to have these exciting things in my mind about you and what makes you special.
Yeah. So thank you, Brett, for sharing those additional tips, like, how to enhance your profile. And very quickly, I will share with everyone the contact information. We do have this as a handout as well, so do download it. We will come to the question and answers part, so stay with us while I just go through this very quickly. We are on a lot of social media portals. Do follow us. Go follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. If you have, we have 7 centers in India. So I would request you to maybe contact the one nearest to you for more information on any of this session things or anything about higher education in the US. Do visit our website. We have a mobile app. So do download it on both your iPhone or your Android, and it give you notifications about different sessions that may be relevant to you. And we do have a toll-free number that is operated during office hours, and as well as phone numbers and WhatsApp center contact information. So these are our 7 centers in India. So I would just pause here for a moment for you to note down the center information that is nearest to you. So I'm based out of Kolkata, and if you are in or around Kolkata, do contact us. A lot of centers are on WhatsApp, so do use that medium as well. And lastly, we do have a one-on-one student membership option. So these are different for different centers, but the things that are covered are the same. So we do give you guidance regarding the entire application process. We do have reviews for your statement of purpose, your resumes, activities list, shortlisting. When you get admits, choosing between admits, we help you with that, as well as all of the 5 steps that I had described. We don't definitely, it is a guiding process. We do not do the work for you. So keep that in mind. You still have to put in all the work yourself, but we do have one-on-one membership options. And in addition to that, all of our other services are free of cost. Do attend as many webinars as you can. Do interact with as many admissions officials that we bring in front of you. And right now, obviously, this is available virtually as well. So without further ado, here we are. Any questions? I know I just realized Brett likes cats, but I do like dogs, so I just put this picture in here. So I will be reading out some questions that we have gotten from our Zoom portal, mainly a lot of the other portals. I would like to encourage you to put in your comment section, your questions, since we are monitoring those as well on Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. So do put in your questions quickly while I read out these questions to Brett from our Zoom portal. So, okay, let's begin. Adya has asked a question regarding the 10 spaces that are on the Common App. So do you think that she can use all of those 10 spaces? Or
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, again, I would focus on what's most important. Think to yourself, if all those 10 activities, really need to be represented on your application. And if they do, that's fine. Just make sure that they're very concise.
Right. So it should be more about what you've done in the activity rather than trying to fill in those 10 spaces.
Yes.
Okay. So the next question is from Vidit, who asks, what kind of activities do you prefer, do admissions officials prefer the most? So maybe, Brett, like to kind of twist this question, can you name some favorite activities that you have? These students have already finished doing the activities. So maybe they're just trying to gauge what kind of activities you like.
Sure. So actually, honestly, I like just seeing involvement in general. I think most counselors would say the same. However, I really enjoy when I get applicants who are perhaps participating in events and organizations that are outside of the norm. So, of course, we get a lot of MUN, the Olympiads, athletics, and that's all great and nice to see. But the students that perhaps participate in a different activity that's not common. Maybe they started it themselves, or maybe, you have a friend and you help with their, disability services, or, things like that that stand out, because I can tell you that of those over 700 applications, most students are in MUN. Most students compete in some sort of an Olympiad. Chess club is pretty common. So yeah, just kind of take a look. If those are the only things that you've done, I just want to say that's fine. Don't be worried right now. I'm not here to terrify you. You are still fine. Just maybe think about how you want to highlight those.
Exactly. So your involvement rather than what that club does, you really need to highlight your own involvement. Maybe you've done something differently in MUN. MUN was one of my activities that I listed in my college application. It was just starting out at that time, so it was something new to the college admissions. My sister who is now at the University of Rochester, started the business club in La Martiniere for girls, which is a very big feeder school. It sends a lot of applications towards the admissions official. So that was something that probably stood out to them, and they accepted her in University of Rochester. Okay, so without further ado, let's move on. Arjun asks, if there is no leadership in one's application list, does it really matter?
I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because, at the end of the day, I think, we all look for some leadership skills, and that you've sort of stepped into roles of leadership. However, keep in mind that that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the president of an organization, or even like a secretary or treasurer or something. It can also be, leadership comes in many different forms. So if you're leading activities, or if you created an activity for your group, it doesn't matter that you're not on what we call like the e-board, or having that title. But so there's many other ways to frame how you've accepted leadership. Maybe you haven't really thought about it, but taking a look back on what you've done, I'm sure that you will see, hopefully that you have some of those qualities that you've put out there.
Great. So let's go on to the next question from Shlok. So he asks that generally many people, like many students, like you have already mentioned, participate and try to really excel in activities like MUN to lead, to basically get into top universities, because they know that this is something that universities are looking for. But he says that he is a team player. Does that really stand out? Is that something that will really be considered?
So a team player, and I suppose it depends on context. So like a team player within like MUN, yeah, I mean, if you see yourself being more of a supporter, so I don't like to say leaders and followers. I prefer very much to say leaders or supporters. So because, you're not just following along, you're supporting something that you believe in. So if you're in a more of a supporting role in most of your activities, that's fine. But tell us about that support. How did you provide that support? That's going to be more important.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is true still now, but when I was doing MUN, different delegates were selected out of a number of students. So you can say that selected fifth, one of the 5 team members selected out of applications from 100 students. So that does show that you were someone that was competing in this activity, or you can say a part of a research team of 10 which supported these many students to be delegates. So do it really it matters how you show that involvement, rather than it doesn't matter, like Brett mentioned, like, you know, leader can be many things. It can be like, it can mean many things. Okay, so let's talk about this question by Nicholas. He talks about whether, this is a very popular question that I have also answered. Does it matter that you are doing several activities in the same field, or does your different activities need to be from a range of different fields?
That is completely up to you. And this is part of us learning about you as a person. And so, you know, if you love astronomy, for example, so much that you're in, you know, several astronomy organizations, whether they're in your high school or maybe in your region, you subscribe to things like that. That's fantastic. And, you know, it just shows your interest, the depth of your interest. So don't be afraid, you know, if you have a few things that you are involved with and they all sort of fall in the same sort of bucket in terms of topic, that's totally fine. Again, in that circumstance, I'm just looking at, wow, the student's really diving deep on this, and that's pretty cool. Rather than, you know, I think that looks sometimes even a little more positive than if a student has, you know, lists like 10 completely different things. I mean, it's good in a way because it shows that you're interested in a multitude of things, and you're curious, which is great. But that depth is really special too.
Great. So the next question is also by him. It talks about whether the first field shows more commitment. Like, should you prioritize in some way the way you're putting your activities in?
Sure. I mean, personally, I like to see when students are putting maybe what they're doing presently towards the top, or in not to, you kind of put this in terms of the resume too. You can also tailor it to what you've found to be the most significant of your contributions and the things that you've been a part of. If you want to put those towards the top, that's also great. I would just prioritize either way, either current towards the top or the most important, because at the end of the day, sometimes, you know, as readers, we have to go so quickly that we, you know, sometimes are scanning more of the top half of the list than the last.
Great. So that's good information. Let's go to the next question by Soumya, who talks about the timing of, like, you know, the different, you have to put in different hours that you do commit to each activity. So she says that she has done a 3 to 4 month activity for 15 hours a week in an NGO. So basically it's like a project based or a summer activity. I know we have talked about how it is good to show commitment to an activity for longer, but would this kind of activity stand out? Something you have done only for 3 to 4 months, but you've spent 15 hours a week doing it?
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's a significant amount of time, especially if it's during a student's summer break, when you know, you might be doing other things. So, yeah, it can be even, you know, a month-long experience. If it was very impactful for you, tell us about it.
Great. So the next question is by Mahima, and she asks, does she need to include the activities from class 8 onwards, or for the past 4 years? Like how, because we do a lot of activities in India. We have from pre-K to class 12 is in the same school. So what activities needs to be included?
Yeah, so I wouldn't go beyond the last 4 years of secondary. I would just keep it within the sort of the traditional years of high school, and of that, you know, again, with emphasis on either your most recent activities, or, you know, your most impactful ones, the ones that you appreciate the most and perhaps participate in the most, putting those forward. But you know, that's sort of how I would frame it. I wouldn't put, I've had students sometimes say, oh, I babysat when I was in in primary, or in when I was 12 until I
Yeah.
was 14, and I'm like, oh, that's really nice, but also like not terribly relevant to you as a person right now. So keep it
Right.
within the 4 years.
Mhm. Okay, great. So the next question is by Vidit, and he has asked, how would you best prefer the activities that they have done? Like, how can they show that they have made a difference? I know this is very subjective, but if you could just briefly answer this, maybe this is student is in an earlier part of his, like, school life, so he's looking to develop these activities.
Sure. Yeah. So you can definitely put your impact in terms of, if there are any measurable outcomes that we talked about earlier. So if you have you increased attendance, or something came about because of this action that you've taken on, that's all important to add. So you can frame those. Again, you said it's very subjective, so it just kind of
Yeah,
depends on what it is.
yeah.
But just kind of think about that prior to whether you've already applied, or you're looking to apply to a certain number of institutions moving forward. Really think about how you are going to frame those impacts, and how we can measure those, because that's going to be more, that's going to stand out more.
Right. And I can give you an example with it from something I did as an activity. There were a lot of clubs in my school when I was in class 11 or 12, which were very popular clubs, like many students, like vice captaincy was a very big one. There was a very popular nature club, or there was a very popular interact club in our school, the interact Rotary Club. But I chose to take part in activities like the cultural club, Drishti Club, which was something that I could identify a problem in. So the example we actually went through was something that actually happened, that the cultural club was somewhere the attendance was really low, so I was someone who went in, and it was easy for me to get a leadership position because not a lot of people were invested in it, but I did do a lot of activities to bring up the attendance by a lot, which showed my impact in that club. So maybe you can look into activities that really matter to you rather than popularity, and see how you can make an impact. So that could be a tip that you can think about as you move forward and select activities you do. Okay, so let's then take a question from Aradhya. And this is also something Brett and me have discussed earlier. So how can we show proof of the activities that we have done? So a lot of students have certificates, or they have, like different things that they have gotten as proof of the activity. And can being a part of the school football team also count as one of these activities? Probably she does not have proof of that.
Sure. Yeah. So one, you don't have to, provide a certificate for everything. And I only sort of chuckle because Unati and I had, a while ago had a conversation about, it can be really daunting when I open an application and I'm reading about a student, and then I have 60 pages of certificates, because I can guarantee you that I'm not really looking at those. Just timing wise, I believe you. However, again, I'm sort of a sleuth, like a detective. So if something stands out to me as like maybe not being something, I'll reach out to your counselor. Or I'll, and perhaps they'll touch base with you. And so I'll ask questions. So no, you don't have to prove everything you've ever done. That's not really necessary, because I'm hoping that your counselors are seeing these things and can, say that, oh yeah, I know that Unati, did this.
Yeah, and a good way to do this also, Aradhya, would be to maybe send this kind of information and tell your counselor to mention it in their recommendation letters, because like Brett said, they cross-check different parts of the application. So if it is mentioned enough, it does show some validity on that end. They will go and cross-check any information. Other applicants from your school are also probably applying to them. So if both of you say you're the president of a nature club, they are going to go back and investigate that one of them is at least false. So do make sure there's consistency, you're speaking the truth, and yes, you can give this activities list to your counselor to mention in the recommendations as well. Great. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So again, this question I'm not going to go over again, but we have already talked about common activities, if they are part of many common activities. So again, try to show your impact and what you have done individually in that activity, which will make you stand out in the application. So next question is by Manjeet, and he asks, does the resume only need to include activities that are not included anywhere else on the application?
Sorry, could you repeat that question real quick?
Yeah, so this question is by Manjeet, and he asks, does the resume only need to include activities that are not mentioned in, say, the activities list or other parts of the application?
Great, thank you so much. So your resume should not be a regurgitation of what you've already put in your activities list. So because it's just, again, timing wise, it's taking away from other things that you may want to highlight on your resume that you didn't get the space to sort of put. So I would leave that to like only things that you didn't list but you find are still important, awards, things like that.
Great. So I will continue asking a few more questions. In the interest of time, we will only take relevant questions to this session. If you have other questions, you can see both of our email IDs on your screen. Do feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to keep this conversation going even after our 7:30 is over. So the next question is by Ananya, and she asks that can we provide our Instagram accounts for showing our work like poems, photography? So she has created a social media account. Is that something that they can provide you?
Yeah, absolutely. Keeping in mind, though, that you want to always test your links. And I meant to mention this earlier because I always feel so bad for students when they include links to anything, whether it's a social media handle or to a Google Drive document or something for a portfolio, and the link doesn't work. Or you have to install an additional software to view the link because we're not able to do that. So yeah, if you have an Instagram handle and that's where you show your work, that's great, include it. Even if I believe, as I've seen in the past, I mean, I have an Instagram, but if a counselor doesn't, I do believe they can still view your stuff as long as make sure that your profile isn't private. Because if you have it on the privacy setting, we can open the link, but we're not going to be able to see your photos because it's private. So keeping that in mind as well to make sure that those work.
Yeah. And it's just good practice to proofread everything you're submitting to, like, a third person. It could be a sibling, it could be a friend, or your Education USA advisor, or like, a counselor. Just make sure that you are checking everything before submitting it, because admissions officers don't have time. They will just skip it if they cannot see it. So make sure you do that. Yeah. Okay, the next.
And it makes me feel bad, but
no, I'm sorry. They need to know the reality. I think the next question is that I can probably answer this. It's by Anandi, and she asked that my school doesn't have a school counselor. So do I need one to access and fill up my school credits on the application? This is not really related to activities list, but you can always ask your school principal or someone who is in the leadership of your school to play the role of a school counselor. So do keep that in mind. And choose someone who knows you well. Don't just choose someone because they are like the highest position in the school. Okay, so the next question is by Somi, and so we will be skipping that question. Okay, so this question by Vishaka is very interesting. Should all our activities be related to the program or career that we want to pursue?
No, not necessarily. So, especially since, we see a lot of students that change their minds. You might come to university and you're like, I wanted to be a chemical engineer, but you end up falling in love with economics or something. So, you can absolutely show, as I mentioned earlier, like just, diving deep into the areas that you're interested in, but you are not beholden to those, because ultimately for schools like at the University of Rochester, we ultimately admit everyone is undecided. So even if you put your interests and what you specifically would like to study, you're not being accepted for, admitted for economics to start off in economics. You're undecided until you declare formally a major by the end of your sophomore year. So You can do whatever's important to you.
Yeah, and I think that's very important to know that undergrad programs, and I've heard it from enough admissions officers to tell you confidently that you're not applying to a program, especially at the bachelor's level, you're applying to the university. So make sure that you know that. Master's, PhD, yeah, those applications are slightly different. But like we already talked about in the beginning of this entire presentation, US universities forced you to be curious. So it is a flexibility that is very attractive to students, that you are supposed to. What have you formulated your opinion that you want to be a computer science major? If you have an intellectual playground presented to you, you may be taking part in so many activities that you develop a different interest. So give yourself that flexibility and have an open mind when you're applying, and make sure that that's also reflected on your application, that you're not someone who's just wants to do a certain thing and are open to new experiences as well. So the next question is from Janelle, and she asks that her personal she has very good academics but poor extracurricular activities. But how will she be compared to someone who has really not that good academics, but strong leadership skills? So she has actually given very specific numbers as well. I know this probably will be very subjective. It may not matter. She says, if supposing her scores are 45 in in IMDP, like a international board, and someone else's is 34, and they have strong leadership skills, and she doesn't have any specific extracurricular activities, how will you judge her application?
Sure, that's a really great question, and I'm so glad that you asked that, Janelle, because it's important to note that it's academics and activities that are important. I wouldn't say that. I think academics, ultimately just being honest always comes first, right? That's just, we have to know that you'll be successful with a even higher rigor. So that is going to be like really critical, but also, even if you don't have as many activities as maybe your friend who's also applying, that can be fine too. It depends on the scope and how you're representing yourself. So if you say you only did one activity, were you very involved in it? Tell us like more about it, and be sure to add maybe more supplements if you have a portfolio or a LinkedIn or something like that. I don't know that so I'm not going to automatically say, oh, this student has a higher GPA but no activities. But I like the academics better, so I'm going to take her over her friend. Like that's not how it's going to be. We're going to really take a look at what you have done, and really view it within context of your school as well.
Yeah, so the impact is important. And also you have your essay as well to elaborate if you've done something very significant, which is you want to talk about. They just want to, like Brett and every other admissions official wants to just see another part of you, not just the academics. You're not just numbers. You're a person who they want to see fit into the university campus. So keep that in mind while you're applying or planning to join different activities. So the next question is by Somi, and she asks, does an extracurricular activity attract funds? So in the end, let me just say that it's 7:30 already. We will be going 5 to 10 minutes over. So just please stay with us. Yeah, sorry, Brett, over to you.
Oh, it's all right.
So the question is, does an extracurricular activity attract funds? This question is by Somi.
So I assume you mean for like scholarships awards.
Financially.
Sure. Yeah, so at the University of Rochester, first of all, we are demonstrated in meeting 100% of demonstrated student need. So that is a commitment we take very seriously. And while certain activities might not have a specific award, we do have we have varying merit awards based scholarships. So if I see a student that submits maybe a portfolio and has a lot of work in the arts, I'm going to nominate them for the Prince Street Scholarship Merit Award. Same with, a lot of STEM activities, women in STEM, or there's a lot of different ones. And actually, I would encourage you to check out our scholarships and merit awards page online. But Yeah, it's just so I can't guarantee that a certain activity is going to guarantee you anything, because I can't guarantee scholarships to any
Mhm.
student. What I can guarantee is that upon completion of the application, if you are admitted, we are considering you for a merit award. So, and those range from anywhere between 2,000 and full tuition. So
Right.
you don't have to apply for that separately.
Great. Yes. So the merit scholarship is something that is based on your entire application. So do keep that in mind. You just need to do really well in application, and that will automatically, in most universities, make you eligible for these awards. Yeah. Okay. So the next question is by Anand, and he asks, if something impactful happened in the sixth grade, which guided me towards research later, can we write about it or in the activities list or in the portfolio? Like, although it's in sixth grade.
Sure. I mean, if it was that impactful on you as a person,
Mhm.
absolutely. You could, provide supplemental information. You could maybe perhaps think about writing it and as your personal statement, your essay. Just being careful, on how you frame that so that it still, stands out and it's unique to you. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can. I just caution against it unless it's very profound.
Right. Great. So we'll just take the last three questions. So this question is by Ananya, and she asks, what if she changed schools in class 11, like 11th grade, and her current school counselor doesn't know about a lot of the activities that she has done? Then how does she frame her application?
Sure. And that's actually pretty common. I've seen a lot of students that, switch schools at some point. And so, when thinking about framing what you've done, yeah, your counselor may not be aware of what you've done, say pre-COVID, if you've changed for your senior year. But you can also ask for like your recommendation letters to be faculty at your previous institution, since you were there longer, and maybe obviously at this point you would have the deepest connections with them. And the same kind of goes for um, you know peer and community recommendations as well. So but you can also ask your previous counselor. You can
Mm.
reach out and still have these folks support you even though you're in a different institution.
Right. But your current application needs to have a counselor from the current school, correct? Like, correct me if
Yes.
I'm wrong. Okay. So your
Yeah, and
counselor
you
needs
can.
to be from your school, but the teachers can be like from other, like your previous
Yep.
institutions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you will ultimately, your new school, your current school is going to have to, that counselor will submit the report. However, they can, again, they usually put something in there about, the student just started here,
Yeah.
or, has been here for, half a year or something. And and again, we're going to see that because you're listing out
Mhm.
your education on your profile. So we're going to see that you've changed high schools, and automatically I'm going to say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, this staff and faculty at the new school is not going to know the student very well.
Great. So thanks for providing that context. And let me tell you that many high school counselors are training themselves how to deal with transfer students. So they are also constantly getting trained by university officials to deal with situations like this by providing as much context as they can about how the student has adjusted to the new school or done in the given resources that they have. Okay, so the next two questions are actually about athletics. So the first question is, do universities consider the sport like cricket in one's application, which is not a popular sport? And I knew Brett knew this was coming. So we're
I
glad.
love it.
Thanks for asking, Deepe. If one has been a school team captain for the last 2 to 3 years, will this be considered as something in the application?
If it's something that you absolutely love, and I know that my Indian students love their cricket, and I enjoy it myself watching. I don't trust myself with a paddle of any sort, so yeah. So I kind of stay away from practicing it. But no, yeah, you can absolutely list it. If it's something that's very very important to you, and you're just absolutely bonkers about it and you're in that leadership role, yeah, you can include it. You don't have to write an essay on it though.
Yeah. And do keep in mind, though, if you're looking at athletic scholarships, they do not have one for cricket. So very few schools, like maybe the College of Worcester actually has a cricket team where I went to school. But again, you may not get any scholarship based on this experience. It will definitely enhance your application, though. The next question is by Sonali, and she asked if she is a national level player in sports, and will this basically be highlighted in the activities list or in the resume? Where will she put this information?
I guess it depends. You know, if you are, yeah, very highly accomplished within something and you'd rather maybe write more about it in your resume, just because, again, you only have that 150 characters, that's something that you could certainly do. Otherwise, you know, I see nothing wrong with still including that in the application and you know, keeping it concise. Just say, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a national player and I've done, you know, traveled to, you know, these places to compete, and I've done really well, and that is fine. Just again, keeping it concise and yeah, showing off what
Yeah.
you've done.
And do just a little plug here. We do have a YouTube channel. I recently did a webinar on applying to athletic scholarships in the US. So do check it out if anyone is interested. Very often, admissions officials do combine the merit scholarship with athletic scholarship. They work with coaches to do that. So do check that webinar out. If you want, you can email me and I can send you over the link for that YouTube channel thing. It's called Score an Athlete's Application to an Undergraduate US University. So with that, I would like to draw this webinar to a close, and very quickly, oops, what happened? I'll just show you the last slide, which is appearing weirdly on my thing. But anyway, so do keep in mind the next webinar in this series will be on September 10th. It's about the application forms such as Common Application, UC Application, Coalition, Texas Application. So do attend that. You have already finished a big part of the undergrad application camp. So clap for yourself. And I would like to really thank Brett for shedding so much light on this very interesting part of our application, and we look forward to having this as a resource for many students in the upcoming years. So thank you so much, Brett. I would also like to thank Janet and Jaydeep as well as Arijita for helping me with the technology as well as relaying questions to me and Brett during this presentation. So thank you so much, my entire team. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure, and I hope that it was informative for everyone and they got a lot out of it. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and good night, and have a good day, Brett.
You too. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Bye.